This video is made possible thanks to our sponsor, Loot Crate. If you haven't heard of Loot Crate, it's basically a service where every month they send you an assortment of unique toys and collectibles, usually centered around the theme of technology, gaming, and general geek culture. If you want to support our show and make videos like this possible, go to lootcrate.com/MWTech and enter MWTech on the coupon code to get an awesome discount. By doing this, not only are you helping us out greatly, but you're making videos like this possible. Hey, what's going on everybody? How's it going? This is Watch, and in this video, we're going to do a direct head-to-head comparison between two of the highest resolution displays in the marketplace right now. We're talking about a 5K showdown. In one corner, we have the 5K iMac that I got a chance to do a couple of videos on back a couple of months ago, and now we have the standalone Dell UP2715K. This is the first standalone 5K monitor that you can buy to pretty much hook up to any compatible graphics card or even a Mac Pro that has the compatibility to support 5K resolutions. So if you're interested in seeing how these two 5K displays compare against each other, let's get right into this video. Now, one thing we have to state right away is that these are two very different products. Basically, the Dell is a standalone 5K monitor that can be used in multiple different platforms, whether that be Apple, Linux, or Windows. It works with a wide range of hardware, although there are some limitations in order to get that full 5K resolution, which we'll talk about. But most importantly, the 5K iMac is an all-in-one computer solution. Basically, you're buying a computer with that 5K display. And that really makes the Dell monitor look really bad in terms of a value standpoint. But here we're really not going to dread about value. What we're going to look at is the image quality differences between a standalone 5K monitor and the one that's built into the iMac. Now, straight off the bat, there's a lot of similarities. First of all, they're the exact same screen size of 27 inches diagonally. They're the exact same aspect ratio of 16:9, and they both have an edge-to-edge glass display, which definitely looks really sleek and seamless. In terms of overall physical dimensions, certainly the iMac is going to be overall larger because it does have a computer component, but impressively, it's not that much thicker than the Dell UP2715K. Now, both displays are based around a liquid crystal display, and they both have a high-quality LED backlight, which gives you a lot of versatility in terms of viewing the displays at different angles up to 178 degrees, either on the left and right side of the monitor. In terms of vertical viewing angles, they're pretty consistent and well with minimal color and brightness shifts. Now, in terms of the exact screen resolution, again, they're identical at 5120 by 2880. So that really means in terms of sharpness and clarity, they're pretty much identical in terms of viewing experience, because they're the exact same screen size and resolution. Now, one interesting notion of both of these two displays is how they actually achieve the 5K resolution. Since 5K is such a new standard and it requires so much bandwidth, it's definitely worth a little bit of time to get into. Now, the Dell monitor actually uses a multi-stream transport system, which basically means that you're going to need to use two DisplayPort 1.2 connections to actually get that full 5K resolution at 60 Hz refresh rate. So therefore, that means in order to get the 5K resolution, you're going to need to have a graphics card that has two available DisplayPort connections. Now, the new 900 series from NVIDIA does have three DisplayPort connections if you're taking a look at the 980, 960, and 970, and I'm sure the AMD cards will have multiple DisplayPort configurations, but I'm sure most people right now don't have an extra DisplayPort connection to basically achieve that 5K resolution, which is certainly quite limiting for a lot of people out there. Now, when taking a look at the 5K iMac, there's not really a clear way on how they achieve that 5K resolution. Certainly there's a connection between the display and the graphics card that's happening. Most people hypothesize that it's probably a multi-stream transport system such as the one we found in the Dell monitor, but just embedded directly into the logic board that powers this iMac. And it could be just their overclocking DisplayPort 1.2 or their Thunderbolt 2 connection to achieve 60 Hz refresh rate at that 5K resolution, but they definitely achieve the same results as we find in the PC side, where we're using two DisplayPort connections to power that Dell 5K. Now, let's talk connectivity and options. Now, certainly there is, again, a big difference between the two because we have a lot more connectivity options on the iMac. Because it's a computer, it has a headphone jack, SD card slot reader, 4 USB 3.0 connections. You have two Thunderbolt 2 connections, as well as gigabit Ethernet. Now, with those two Thunderbolt connections, you can connect an external monitor up to 3840 by 2160 at 4K standard, which is kind of cool. available. You don't have that option to daisy chain other UHD monitors on the Dell, unfortunately. But in terms of connectivity, the Dell has a mini DisplayPort connection, otherwise known as a Thunderbolt connection, and it has two DisplayPort 1.2 connections, which, as mentioned before, is the way you achieve that 5K resolution at 60 Hz refresh rate. And after that, you have a 5-port USB 3 hub. One of those ports is a battery charging port, so it has a little bit of extra voltage, and you do have an SD card slot reader on the side of the monitor itself. Now, interestingly, both of these displays have built-in speakers that are pretty decent for being built-in. The Dell specifically has the Harman Kardon 16 watts per channel stereo system, which fires down at your table and then bounces around your room. And they're pretty definitely very loud, a little bit louder than what I encountered with the iMac speakers, but the iMac speakers are fairly good in terms of fidelity, and they're kind of up there in terms of the overall bass frequencies. So what we're going to do is just take a quick listen to both of those speakers, and you could decide which sounds better to you. Now, just before we continue on to this comparison, I want to let you guys know that it definitely takes a lot of support to make videos like this happen, and I really want to thank our sponsors Loot Crate for making this video possible in the first place. Now, if you don't know what Loot Crate is, it's basically a service where every month you receive an assortment of unique toys and collectibles that are centered around a particular type of theme based on technology, gaming, and general geek culture. This month's crate is dedicated to all the fun and fantastic games that we love to play, from tabletop to video, board games, card games, RPGs, desk toys, and much more. Here's how it works. Loot Crate sends you every month a crate that's worth over $40 for only $13.95 plus shipping and handling. If you sign up for multiple months, they cut you out an even better deal, which is pretty awesome. And if you want to try this out, go to lootcrate.com/MWTech and make sure to enter MWTech as a coupon code to get an added discount. And by doing that, not only are you helping us out greatly, but you're also making videos like this possible. Now we're going to finally get into the nitty-gritty image quality differences between these two. We're going to first focus on the maximum level of brightness and the overall consistency of the backlight itself on both panels. Now, based on my individual light meter test, I got a score of about 423 CDM square on the center quadrant of the iMac, and you can see that the dips in brightness in the different areas on the iMac display are not too bad, pretty typical of most edge-lit LED backlit displays. We get a maximum deviation of about 68 CDM squares on some areas of this screen. Now, if we take a look at the Dell 5K, we get a maximum brightness of about 345 CDM square, which is a lot lower than the brightness that we got on the 5K iMac, but we get a little bit less deviations in terms of brightness. As you can see, the maximum amount of deviation is about minus 40 CDM square on certain regions of the screen, which is definitely a lot better than the minus 68 in some of the areas on the 5K iMac. So that just means we have a better, more evenly lit display on the Dell, but the brightness factor is definitely a lot more apparent on the 5K iMac. Now, taking a look at the deepest, darkest black points that we can achieve basically at the lower brightness settings, we're getting about 0.35 CDM square on the 5K iMac at the center point, which is definitely not bad, and the Dell achieves basically a 0.38 CDM square, so not as dark as the 5K iMac. So that means in terms of contrast ratio, we do have a much higher contrast ratio on the 5K iMac, almost close to 1200 to 1 versus about 907.8 to 1 on the Dell 5K. Now, just keep in mind when you're talking about contrast ratio, everybody measures contrast a little bit differently from manufacturer to manufacturer. They use different equipment and different methodologies. And based on my specific methodology and equipment, I can certainly say that the 5K iMac definitely has the better overall contrast, as we mentioned before, better white, and the Dell 5K is not as bright as the 5K iMac, but it's certainly up there in terms of darkness, and that's certainly one of the reasons why it doesn't have that higher end contrast ratio, because it can't be torched as high as the 5K iMac. But keep in mind, in terms of color accuracy, the Dell monitor certainly has some tricks up its sleeve. It is a true 10-bit panel, and what we're going to do is take a look at the Delta E rating of both these two displays. And if you don't know what Delta E is, it's basically a average color difference between a reference color and what the display can actually reproduce in terms of that specific color. And basically, to get a perfect score, 0 is absolutely perfect, but in a real world situation, less than 1 or about 1 is imperceivable to the human eye. So the rating that we got post calibration on the Dell monitor is about 1.44, which is really good, above average, up to a reference level standard almost. And the best score that we could achieve on the 5K iMac after color calibration is about 1.73, and that's certainly not as good as the Dell, but funny enough, there's still a lot of professionals that use iMacs to basically do graphic designs, or if they have a printer services, and they really achieve pretty good results for web design or for printing out t-shirts or any kind of graphic design work on a 5K iMac. But if you really want to get down to the most accurate colors possible, looks like the 5K Dell is certainly more accurate. Now, in terms of color gamut, again, we find a little bit of advantage on the Dell side. In terms of sRGB, we're getting over 103.1% of the color spectrum and sRGB color space, and Adobe RGB, we're hitting about that 100% mark after calibrated, which is definitely really amazing. If you're doing any kind of Photoshop work, Lightroom work, or even Adobe Premiere Pro stuff, that's really fantastic. You could definitely use this in professional circumstances. And the color gamut on the 5K iMac post calibration is 102.4 of the sRGB color space and about 98% of the Adobe RGB color space, which is definitely not bad. Now, one of the last things that we're going to take a look at is the white point measurement of each monitor, basically where the whitest point an LCD panel can achieve, which typically is ideal at 6500 Kelvin. And in terms of the 5K iMac, we're getting about 6646 Kelvin, and the Dell is a little bit better at 6582 Kelvin. So a little bit closer on the Dell side in terms of getting a more truer white. So again, for people that do any print work or graphic design for website development or things like that, that's certainly nice to know that you have a more pure white on the Dell side. But again, you can calibrate your 5K iMac to offset that white difference and get a more pure 6500 Kelvin rating. Now, the very last thing that we're going to talk about is the input lag that both monitors have. And since they're IPS, usually with that, you sacrifice the response time. They're both at 8 millisecond response time, which is certainly not ideal for most serious gamers out there. And although you can still game on both of these displays, but gaming at 5K resolutions on the iMac is pretty much impossible, even with the upgraded R9 M295 graphics card in there. You still can't really maintain playable frame rates at that 5K resolution. And of course, on the PC side with the Dell monitor, you can use multiple GPU configurations, whether that be an SLI or Crossfire, and achieve more playable 5K frame rates. But again, you're going to need quite a machine to make 5K gaming a reality. But I'm that, guys. That's really it. If you have any specific questions about anything I talked about, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like the video. That really helps us out tremendously. And even though I think the 5K iMac has a lot more value and it has a ton of more practicality, and you can justify that $2,500 price a lot better than just buying a standalone 5K monitor itself. But right now, the 5K standard right now for monitors is very new. It is very expensive to make standalone panels, and obviously the price is going to go down once people get into this space and start investing in 5K products and things like that. But generally, I have to say, if you're interested in the difference between a 5K standalone monitor and a 4K standalone monitor, well, I have a perfect video for that as well. But definitely check out that video if you want to know more. And if you're interested in this specific monitor itself, the Dell UP2715K, I actually have a full-on review on the channel where we discuss all of the pros and cons. Why would somebody even pay $2,500 for this kind of monitor in the first place in that video? So definitely check that out. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care. This video was made possible thanks to Loot Crate. If you're interested in Loot Crate, go to lootcrate.com/MWTech and enter MWTech in the coupon code. And if you do that, not only will you get an awesome discount, but you're helping us greatly to support the channel and to make videos like this possible.